everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. I am doing my second episode from a Delta Sky Club this year, actually. So I'm excited to be here, and just got to New Orleans, and actually, what a great place to talk about beverages, right? And I'm excited to bring to you today my guest, whose LinkedIn profile I was showing, but Sam Stewart right there, who is the Director of Beverages for Sodexo Live. Beverages, alcohol. I did say I wasn't going to say but alcohol for Sodexo Live. And we're going to talk about, first off, how and why they created mocktails, non-alcoholic beverages, for the Taylor Swift concerts at the venues that they handled. And how that went. So hello, Sam.
Hi, Tracy. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Okay. So my first question is, you all managed the last 3 American tours for Taylor Swift's concert, as well as Vancouver you've got Vancouver, right?
Correct.
So that's like 5 or 6 shows?
It was 4 venues, 3 shows per venue. It's a full weekend of experience. Yeah. We had 12 shows in total.
Wow. That's amazing. Lots of people.
Big stadiums, yes.
Yeah. So what prompted, because I went searching for, information on you and you were quoted in People magazine about creating non-alcoholic beverages for the Swifties. How did that come about?
We did. Through a lot of consumer insight and guest research that we do and that partners do, we've found that certain demographics of consumers coming to specific events, usually concerts or events that have a theme to them, they're looking for something to eat and drink that ties in with the theme of that show. Of course, This is a very easy one. This is Taylor Swift. You can find all sorts of information about Swifties, how they act, how they eat and drink at functions, and what's important to them. Every touch point throughout the venue, food, beverage, retail, everything through the venue, they like to see the theme or winning everywhere. So we decided to take that to a big level with our food and beverage. Specifically in beverage, we typically sell a lot of alcohol, but at an event where most of or a huge chunk of the attendees, Swifties, are under legal drinking age, we had to shift our game a little bit. So to do that, we did offer a cocktail and a mocktail. And realistically, for speed of service, you're talking about 50 or 60,000 people coming to this event. They're football stadium events, not your local music theater. We needed to make sure that we could be very efficient in our service. So we took an approach where we offered the mocktail version of the cocktail, which was exactly the same thing, just without the spirit in it. Okay. And it had a different name and came with a fun little garnish. That was a driving factor in the success for the mocktail. So that if, say you're a Swiftie going to the concert and you're 16 or 17 years old and you're going with mom or dad, maybe mom or dad has the cocktail version that looks exactly like the mocktail. There's a sense of connection there between the two guests, one of legal drinking age and one not.
Wow. And how many did you end up selling?
Thousands.
Thousands.
More than we expected. The fun garnish was an edible straw, an edible flavored strawberry straw, and we ran out at most of our buildings. So torture, some of our guests towards the end of the concert didn't get the edible straw, but a lot of them bought 2 or 3 drinks during the event. So hopefully they got to try the straw with the first or second drink, but we sold thousands and thousands at every show.
Wow. Did Taylor Swift have any input or say on it at all before or after?
Not necessarily on the drink itself. There was Taylor's team. We think the information probably comes directly from Taylor through her team, but it probably just comes through her team. They had a lot of guidelines over what we can call the drink, if you do a souvenir cup or not, if the souvenir cup was considered retail merchandise, et cetera, et cetera. So they had some guidelines, but not about the contents or the recipe or the creation of the drink itself.
Okay, cool. But I did read that you connected with some of the Swifties that work for Sodexo Live to come up with what you were doing. How did that go about?
We did. We had a Swiftie council, and that was employees of Sodexo Live of all ages who are Taylor fans. We included the non-legal drinking age children of some of our employees who were part of the Swiftie council. And that was, I mentioned before, some of the insights that we used to develop our food and beverage products for the concerts. A lot of that came from the Swiftie council that we developed.
Awesome. Well, and you've got a fan, Sodexo Live is actually on Instagram right now saying, "Go Sam, go." I mean, and I'm sure the children of your employees were like elated to be able to participate in that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm probably a little bit too old and not really the demographic to be a true Swiftie, though I do enjoy her music and think she's done some amazing things for the music industry and other artists. But the true Swifties who were involved it was their life for a couple of months while they were part of this Swiftie Council. They were super engaged. It's really wonderful to see the younger generation just really engaged in what their experience is like when they come to an event like this. And we have to change our approach. And I've long been a proponent of, through sports and entertainment venues and music venues and concert venues, I've always tried to change approach based on the demographic of the people attending that performer, artist, or specific event. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we didn't do that in this industry, but today we have to. And not only do we have to, but we want to. It's what keeps this industry exciting.
Exactly. And I'm like, I don't know why AC/DC came to mind, but the drinking of AC/DC fans is going to be completely different than Swiftie fans.
Absolutely. We had a country music performer in Indianapolis at the same exact venue where Taylor Swift performed just a couple of months later. And when we looked at everything from per caps to what products sold to how many they sold to the pricing, it was opposite, the exact opposite. So we can't leave the menu up from event to event. We have to change it. And in a lot of cases, we had some static options, but just the naming convention changed, which was important to our Swiftie fans too. They, when we had the Taylor Tots or things like that on the food side, the mocktail or cocktail we had here with the Love Spiral and the Go Viral, obviously lyrics from one of her famous songs. They like even just that connection, not even a recipe, but the naming convention was important too.
I mean, and that's surprising, or not surprising, but that's really important to note when any event planner is trying to create something, like looking at who your demographics are and tying the food and beverage to the theme. Like food and beverage should not just be an afterthought, right?
No.
It really should be tied into it.
And, I think it's interesting you mentioned afterthought. I've worked in the on-premise beverage industry for about a decade and a half now. And for the last 5 or 6 years, namely in the concessions and food service environment. And the food and beverage is never the main event. People are going to a baseball game, they're coming to a concert, they're going to a convention. But we can't be complacent because food and beverage has the opportunity to enhance that entire experience. It also has the opportunity to, I don't want to say drag down the experience, but if it doesn't match, it's not exciting. So from an F&B perspective, we can help our clients just dazzle our guests with an entire experience. And we're doing a better job of that than we were 10 years ago today.
That's awesome. Now, how are you going to take this experience with the mocktails, and apply it to your concessions and your convention centers that you manage so that the conference attendee, can have that same feeling of inclusion, when they're participating in an event?
Sure. Well, it's so important. When we consider, we've got a bunch of convention centers throughout the country, a couple of the largest ones in the country in terms of busyness. And it's so important. I've been working in the alcohol industry for, like I said, a decade and a half. And I go to a number of events that are geared towards alcohol. It's difficult to just be slammed with alcohol. You've got to take a break at some point. There's a term that I've heard over the years, and it's called the practice of zebra striping. And I've done it for a long time before I knew what it's called. But oftentimes I might have a vodka soda with a lime as a cocktail. And then I might order my next beverage as just a club soda with a lime. And I still have the experience of drinking something that looked exactly like what I was drinking before, but break between. That's called zebra striping. You switch between a full alcohol drink and then a non-alcohol drink. And I think that's important when you're at a professional event. We're probably not going to put back 6 vodka sodas over the course of a 6-hour or 60-minute reception, but I can still have something that is in the same vein of a cocktail.
Well, and that actually happened last summer at an event, and we had some athletic beer and some other mocktails on the bar. And I was just standing talking to the bartender, and this guy came up and ordered an athletic beer. And I'm like, "Oh, athletic, you like it?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm so grateful to be able to switch between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic, as I go through the day, because this conference, people were up in the bar until 2:00 in the morning. So he wanted to be able to maintain his composure. I hope he wasn't drinking until 2 that whole time, but because it probably wouldn't have helped, but that much. But at least he was thankful that we had that athletic beer.
Well, what we're finding with consumers who choose a mocktail or a no alcohol beer, even a low alcohol spirit or wine. It's very similar to when Beyond Meat became popular. Their biggest consumer is not vegetarians. Their key consumers are meat eaters. And same, as low and no alc continues to grow, which it is, I think we'll find the same thing, that the consumers are not sober people. They are people who just want a break from their alcohol, whether it's for a health reason, whether it's because they're at a conference and their day starts at 7:00 the next morning and they don't want to feel a hangover, or whether it's, to your point, they want to make sure that, while they're at the conference with the CEO and their clients and their important guests, they want to be able to keep their composure and maybe remember what happened the night before.
Right, exactly. And I mean, I don't drink anymore, and my drink of choice before was what you said, a Tito's and soda with a lime, and I go to club soda, and I've talked to a couple of people and they're like, well, I'm like, they're not like, I'm not going to order a mocktail. I'm like, I'll just have the water or the club soda. And I'm like, but I like to have that change in flavor sometimes. So how are you? I mean, what kind of drink did you make for Taylor Swift's event? And I'm going to ask this question. Is it full of juice? Because the one that somebody offered the other day was just cranberry juice and pineapple juice with some club soda. I'm like, that's not a mocktail in my opinion. But
that's just juice. No, the cocktail that we made, we relied on one of our great partners from American Beverage Marketers. They have a product line called Finest Call, which is very popular.
What's it called again?
Called Finest Call. It's very popular. Bar industry. Okay. They have some really wonderful different mixer blends that are great on their own as a mocktail or a non-alcoholic cocktail or as a cocktail. So like I mentioned, for speed of service, we decided to offer the cocktail and the mocktail as counterparts, but exactly the same drink, just without the spirit for the mocktail version. So that drink had some of our favorite flavors from Finest Call. It had some citrus, it had some strawberry. It was topped with soda water, but then addition of the edible strawberry straw, which is kind of fun. It definitely graphic, but we used one of their proprietary juice blends that wasn't just cranberry orange. It had some other tropicals in it, which make it far more interesting, and the flavors were much more.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to go from like a club soda to a soda that's laden with sugar when I'm asking for that non-alcoholic beverage. I mean, that's not my goal. I could have drinking a soda. I want that, but I don't.
Yeah. And, for us, we're a concessionaire. We are not a nonprofit company. We're for profit. And if you think about the math, say you've got, and I'll see how the math works in my head here on the fly. Say you've got an hour-long reception for 500 guests. And it's a cash bar. It's not hosted. About half of our events are cash, about half are hosted bars, right? So say on average, out of those 500 guests, maybe 3 out of 4 are going to consume 2 drinks, whether it's beer, wine, or spirits. Okay. And say those drinks are $9 each. So that's somewhere around $7,000 of revenue. Out of
you did really good math there.
I think somebody can check me, but I think it's right around $7,000, right? So you take the other 25% of those 500 guests who are not going to consume alcohol. Maybe half of them are going to order a Diet Coke. That's not $9. That's probably closer to $3 on average, right? Say over the course of the hour-long reception, those 125 guests drink 2 sodas. That's what, $400. The other 25%, or maybe they drink a coffee or a bottle of water. They're still spending some money, but less than a cocktail, right? The other half of that 25% that's not drinking, they're just drinking water from the water station. That's free. We earn no revenue for that. So that puts us at just a little bit over $7,000 for that hour-long reception. What if of those 25 guests who didn't consume alcohol, what if most of them, say 100, chose 2 mocktails that were designed? Maybe it has tropical juice. Maybe it has a guava beer, pure cranberry and soda water. Maybe it's got house-infused lavender syrup. When we can charge more. We don't charge $3 for those drinks. Say we're coming in at $8, just a little bit under that drink, because it does have those unique garnishes, those nice syrups in it, etc. We're probably gaining another, if I'm doing math in my head right, had we not offered those drinks and we just left those non-drinkers with their carbonated soft drink or their coffee or their bottled water, probably less than $1,000 in revenue on a team.
Yeah.
But when we're offering them that nice drink that's thoughtful,
right,
we're earning that revenue for a good drink, not just charging too much money for a club soda with cranberry juice.
Right. Exactly. And we need to shout that from the rooftops. But the other part too is for me is a meeting planner that's, hired you or they're in your venue. They're going to meet the food and beverage minimum faster by doing the same thing and create a better, you're both combined as partners, creating a better experience.
Yeah. If we're not offering it, our guests only have the option to drink that carbonated soft drink or the coffee or the tea or the bottled water at a couple points. We are literally leaving money on, well, I'm not going to say the table. We're leaving the money right there in the bar. By offering it, maybe not everybody will pay $8 for a mocktail with fancy juices and pass a few syrups, but a lot of people will. Absolutely.
Yeah, I will. I mean, it's curated. So it's not just like, well, somebody served me a cheer wine and Fresca mix together and called it a mocktail. Like, no, that's a soda. It's almost soda. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love cheer wine, by the way. It's so much fun.
Yeah. Okay. So what, I'm assuming that because you were going to serve that many, you batched those drinks so that you weren't making them on the fly.
We had some venues that did both, depending on where they were serving it. It was a pretty easy drink to build in the glass. It wasn't a shake and strain cup or mocktail. It was something that could be built and agitated in the glass, so it was easy. Most of our venues did batch it one way or another.
Okay.
And then at our premium bars and clubs, we did elevate the drink just one more level with maybe a more expensive vodka for the cocktail and maybe a nicer glassware for the mocktail, et cetera.
Okay.
And then the theater or the bar comes in and they did make those drinks, but in those spaces, the efficiency wasn't quite as important as in your general concessions environment.
Right. Well, and I want to jump on the fact that you said a different glassware. I mean, that's important too. I mean, for one, in that environment with underage drinkers, you don't want them to be in the same type of glass for sure, because that kid might drink the wrong one. But I like the idea of making sure that it is in a different kind of dry glass than a Dixie cup that we get the water in, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. In each venue, I will say we tried to do a souvenir cost for the concerts. Taylor's team is brilliantly focused on what is merchandise and what's not merchandise. The line for them is, do they get a cut of the sale of it because it's merchandise? So we weren't able to do a fully branded cup. Probably the most successful version was in New Orleans at the Caesars Superdome. We used a plastic disco ball cup. Okay. And that identified cocktail as the mocktail. The cocktail was served in a different product. We were also able to charge a little bit more because it was, even though it was a tailored, redid piece, it was also kind of a neat souvenir to have too.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure that all those Swifties love that, to take that home. Yeah.
We saw so many Instagram photos, I have a water glass here, but, with their disco mirror bottle cup, that if you've got a boring cup in a plastic glass, it doesn't usually end up on Instagram. If you've got a fun vessel, it doesn't matter what's in it. It usually ends up on Instagram or Facebook because of the, how fun the glass of the vessel was.
Right. Exactly. Okay, so let's going forward with mocktails and the trends. And I think last weekend was the non-alcoholic festival in Washington, D.C., which I didn't get to go to. I think it was 2 weekends ago. But what do you see the trends being? And I want to preface this too, is there's a lot of non-alcoholic beverage brands out there, that are, and are you implementing those, or like the Spiritless and it's the only one that comes to mind. The Ritual, are you utilizing those brands, or are you utilizing the one that you mentioned earlier?
We're testing a bunch right now across the board. Many of our, we're not a chain restaurant where every venue is exactly the same. With its Sodexo Live, specifically, so we've got 130 some venues. They're all programmed a little bit differently. So our venues do have quite a bit of leeway to program as they wish. We give some guidance on the preferred brands, the brands that are available in a lot of places, right? There's a whole bunch of different ways you can serve a non-alcoholic or a mocktail. One is the most simple way, like you mentioned before, is just maybe a combination of juices with soda or anything non-spirit, right? You can then go to the next step and do a non-alcoholic cocktail, which for me is a little bit different than a mocktail. That's using a product like Seedlip, right? It's not a de-alcoholized spirit. It's most of those are botanical concoctions that taste good. I really like what Seedlip has done. They haven't tried to exactly mirror other spirits, for example, or for gin. They take some of the flavor profiles that are usually found in those spirits and use botanicals to create a non-alcoholic spirit that gets close to it, but they're not trying to match it exactly. It's very difficult to do. brown spirits, for example, they're very difficult to make a non-alcoholic brown spirit taste exactly like the actual spirit does.
Right.
Some of the beer providers have done a really good job of it. I think it's very difficult to tell the difference between a non-alcoholic Corona and an actual Corona, because they brew the non-alcoholic Corona with alcohol and then they de-alcoholize it. There's actually an additional step after the regular beer is brewed. In spirits, it's not quite the same way. You can't really de-alcoholize alcohol within the spirit sector.
Okay.
So for me, after just blending some juices and adding soda to it, the next step is using one of those non-alcoholic spirits like a sea-flavored and creating something with a lot of layers of flavor. And the next version after that is using ready-to-drink mocktail. And there's a lot of great ones out there too. You're starting not only in beer, but also in non-alcoholic cocktails that are ready to drink.
Right.
That, maybe for a venue, if it's a pop-up bar within a convention center, for example, those bars are not much bigger than my desk here, and you can easily serve that NARTD right there, crack and go or pour over ice and go. So that's another way to do it. We're testing all of those things right now. And we see growth, though it's still a very small channel. I think if I remember back to the last chunk of data that I saw from IWSR, the non-alcoholic share of total beverage is expected to be only 3 to 4% in the next few years. So it's still a very small chunk of the industry as a whole.
Right.
We do see the CAGR growing every single year. So it is taking, I think it's not just converting drinkers to non-drinkers. It is bringing new people into the category of bar, I'll call it altogether.
Right. Exactly. Well, and you can say the same thing about that vegan market, right? I mean, it's still a small percentage, but there are a large contingency that are requesting it for environmental reasons, for health reasons, et cetera. So, I mean, so, and like you said about the Impossible Burger, it's not the vegetarians aren't eating, it's for the meat eaters who are trying to cut out meat on a regular.
Yeah,
so much.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that'll be the same trend within these low and alc spirits. Really, the no alc is driving the growth, I think, for a couple of reasons. Zero alc, true no alcohol products, they've got fewer restrictions. They can advertise differently than an alcoholic product can. They have more sales channels. You can buy them direct on e-commerce, et cetera. There's clearly understand the proposition between no alc. There's no alc in it, right? I think no alcohol category is a little bit more confusing. If typically spirit is 30 to 40% ABV, not everybody understands what a 20% ABV or a low alc spirit means. It's lower, the numbers are lower, but what does that really mean? How does it affect me differently? So I think the no alc category, true no alcohol, is really driving the majority of the growth today.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, so Patty's piped in here on LinkedIn saying, have you experimented with the functional mocktails with the health benefits?
Yeah, I think that's, I talked about the different types of, mocktails and non-alcoholic cocktails before. This is an important one too. And really, I think when you talk about the benefits, we're talking about drinks that have adaptogens in them. I think of a number of products that have come onto the market, and I'm not talking about THC and cannabis-derived beverages yet. I'm talking about beverages, and usually these are going to be your canned or your ready-to-drink beverages. We're not mixing drinks with ashwagandha and lion's mane in them. But you're seeing a lot of those products come out today. And what I see is, I just had a product that's in the market, and they're really good. I just sampled them over the weekend. In fact, they have 2 products that are aimed at the lift. So uplift, arise, that kind of thing. You might drink them before an event or even in the morning, perhaps. And then they have 2 canned products that also the taste is really good, but they're meant to calm you down or relax you at the end of the day. And I think that's great because you're doing multiple day parts. You're getting a consumer to product before and after event, or in the morning and evening, or maybe even in the afternoon. A lot of people might have a caffeinated soft drink in the afternoon. If you want to stay away from caffeine, if that affects you adversely, one of the adaptogen products that have the uplifting, the ingredients, like I mentioned, things like lion's mane and ashwagandha. There's all these things. There's
Lucha.
Yeah, pea flower. There's all these things that create the lift or the relax that are not alcohol or not caffeine. And I think be equally as part of the category as no and low alcohol cocktails too.
No, that's awesome. And you're not going to get that many potential buyers of that when you're at a bar. But I kind of want to say, like last summer at one of the hotels I was working an event, and she's like, well, we don't get any requests. And this was the catering manager. And I'm like, well, because you're not offering them. So do you see yourself, and I don't find them on catering menus, here's the non-alcoholic versions. Are you all going to start adding those to your menus as well, or are meeting planners going to have to request them?
No, we're starting to add them.
Good.
Especially within our convention business. It's not a seasonal business really, but we update menus usually on an annual basis, and that usually happens at the end of Q4 or in the beginning of Q1. So I'm starting to see a lot of those menus come through they usually come from our designers to me, and I'm seeing a lot of stuff being added, whether that's an actual list of products or whether that's even something as simple about a blurb as ask about our mocktail offerings, ask about our low alcohol offerings. We might be listing them. Oftentimes it might not be that we stock them all the time, but we will bring them in and have an available list specifically for people that want to buy them.
And then going on to that, are you able to get those through your distributor, or are you buying them direct online from the manufacturer?
From any number of resources. I think of Seedlip, which is one of the bigger ones. They're available from our standard wine and spirits distributors in most cases. Okay. Some of the food service distributors of the Cisco's, the GFSs of the world, they're starting to pick up some of those options too. Okay. Some of them are available through the redistributors. They're starting to bring in some of them. One that I mentioned, a company like Chef Warehouse. So we don't have to buy them at retail through Amazon. We can buy them here.
Okay. Yeah. Cause and probably direct and I call them manufacturers, but the drink makers. Yep. Yeah. And just going from, looking at some pricing, cause we drink Ritual and Tennyson in our house, and I do have some Seedlip, but that bottle of Tennyson and Ritual is the same price as a bottle of Tito's.
It is. And, it seems
on the retail market. Yeah.
Absolutely. You go to your local liquor store, your Total Wine, whatever it is, there's not much of a price difference in a 750 ml bottle. I think that's something that the consumer has to understand over time and get their head around, because it's a little bit challenging when you're thinking about how is this so expensive? So expensive, right? The product in the ingredient list is of very high quality in those type of products, and they're not price gouging. It does truly cost those manufacturers the same amount of money as it does to make a spirit.
Yeah. And we have to understand. Yeah. But I do like the fact that you said maybe it's $1 less than, than the Tito's drink, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So sometimes we may make a little bit less margin on them, but in the example I gave, we'd rather sell the $8 cocktail than the $3 soda or water.
Right. Exactly. So going back to those menus real quick, what creative ways can beverage managers at venues, present and price these drinks for planners to, and I'm going to say entice them to add, if they weren't thinking about them, they're like just looking at the regular thing. How can you get me as the planner to add them to the menu? Sure.
I think it's about educating people that you made the comment before that nobody really asks for it. Typically, when a consumer walks up to a bar, they're usually walking up intending to order an alcoholic beverage. They might be looking for so you might not hear it often. The bartenders might not hear it often that people are asking for it. I guarantee that as all of these types of products are advertised more, you see them on social media feeds all the time. When the consumer sees the can, or they see the bottle, or they see the menu that specifically calls out the mocktail or the non-alcoholic cocktail, they will order it. I guarantee they'll order it. In the example I gave before, I think I said maybe 75% of your guests at this theoretical reception might drink the cocktail, but we're just we haven't paid attention to that other 25% of guests outside of soda or water. They've ordered the soda or the water or the coffee or tea because that's what was on the menu. If we add something else to the menu at that mid-range price point, they will order it. And I think it's trial and error. I think you need to start doing it and seeing that it works, understanding that it's not going to be a huge category for you, but it in general should be incremental growth for your food, your beverage business. I think the same thing happens in food when you've got your non-meat eater or somebody who just doesn't wish to eat meat that night. They're maybe not ordering the $35 meat entree. They're going down to the $14 salad. But what if they could order the $22 meat replacement entree? It's the same concept. If you're not offering it, you're not going to buy it.
Okay. I love that because it is true. I mean, I've shown an example that I went to a restaurant and the only thing that was gluten-free was the steak and one salad, right? Out of 40 food options. And then I go to another one that every appetizer out of 15 was gluten-free. And my best friend is like, what are you going to choose? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, this is how much more money this restaurant made, because put in their pockets. So what strategy, because I'm sure I'm going to say this, like, I'm not going to say that a event bartender is as affluent of a bartender or as skilled of a bartender as one that you're going to find in the hippest bar, right? So how do we transition and get them educated onto this? Is that making the beverage manager making the mocked or the batched cocktails in the back, or can we get them on board with this?
Yeah, I think it is one of the challenges that we have for sure. And I think it comes down to, maybe 10, 15 years ago, you'd go to a convention and you had the option between Chardonnay and Merlot. You just had two options. And the challenge there was educating bartenders about, hey, consumers are drinking Pinot Grigio and subbing on Blanc, and they're drinking Pinot Noir and red blends today. It took a while to educate our bartenders. And to your point, in general, I'm generalizing here, but our event bartenders are not mixologists at high-end bars or moonlight event bartender in general. We have some wonderful bartenders out there. We absolutely do, and they get behind it. But it's a slow roll to educate our folks as to why we're adding these cocktails or mocktail, non-alcoholic cocktails, why they're on the menu. How do you talk about them? How do you even encourage a guest that you train them to encourage the guest that is ordering just diet soda to point out, hey, we've got two really neat non-alcoholic options that are way better than soda you're offering. You want to get more shot. Our beverage partners, even the ones who sell us beer, wine, and spirits, they are helping us to educate our teams about how to do that, because they recognize that when the ocean rises, all boats float, right? So it's just continuous education. It's not putting 15 options on a menu. It's adding one or two at a time, making sure that our teams are comfortable with that and expanding.
I want to take it a little bit of a tangent here. Vegan and plant-based beverages, alcoholic version wise. Do you have them on the menu? Do you follow them? I know this was years ago, but I know that, what's the really dark beer from Ireland? Guinness. Yeah, they went vegan. Or, I know it was only for a certain, I don't know if they've completely gone vegan, but is that another market that you're looking at as well? And what about even kosher wines as well? Thank you.
Yeah. Those are all very niche pieces of the industry, right? I honestly don't know a whole lot about the beers that have gone vegan and all that kind of thing. So my title there is specifically beverage alcohol. So I've focused on alcohol for much of my career. So it's new for me too. I think to your point about, how we engage our event bartenders and whatnot with some of these things, I think we have to take baby steps and start with simple pieces. I think on a catering or event menu, offering something is better than nothing today. I think those other things, the vegan and the kosher wine's a little bit different. That would be very specific to an event or a demographic. Organic wine, completely natural wine, for example. Those are all very small pieces of our industry. And in a lot of cases, we don't have the call to become that specialized. I can't say that in another 5 or 10 years, that won't be the case, though. I say nobody, I'm speaking in general terms here, really cared about organic or natural or biodynamically farmed wines 10 years ago. To today's consumer who are learning about some of those things, largely via social media, they're asking for them now. So we have to start to pay attention. It doesn't mean we've done it in a big way yet, but I think going forward, it's something that'll creep its way into some of our menus. Again, all based on demographic of an event, based on location, that kind of thing too.
Well, and if you don't know it, barnivore.com is a website that you can go find them all.
Cool.
They track it. Yeah. Barnivore.com. Yeah.
I'm going to know.
Yeah. And somebody said, quiet my background noise. So that's me. I'm in a Delta Sky Club. So when I'm not talking, I will definitely put myself on mute. But so we can wrap it up here too. What do you think, if you could give one piece of advice to event planners and other beverage managers about creating these non-alcoholic beverage options that are innovative and approachable, what would you say?
If it's new for you, if it's not something that you're already offering, start simply. It's the KISS method, right? Don't dive headfirst and go overboard and offer 15 options. Start by offering a couple of options. Maybe a 1 or 2 non-alcoholic wine menu of mocktails that's, just 3 or 4. Keep it simple. And I would say toe dip so that you're comfortable, so that you can get your meeting planners comfortable with it, that you can get your bartenders comfortable with doing these other kinds of things that are not maybe normal for them. Take a slow approach. And as you find out that it works, you can then have the opportunity to get a little bit more creative with it.
Yeah. And as your staff gets more in tune with all of it as well. And I mean, I suggest doing a tasting with all your bartenders as well. You get them to say, hey, I like this one and not this one, etc.
Yeah, that's part of that whole training and education. We do that for alcohol and non-alcohol. It's important to do that all the time.
Well, Sam, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here and talking to us about how it started with Taylor Swift's Mocktails. You can connect with Sam on LinkedIn. There's his LinkedIn profile. And then you can also connect with Sodexo Live and see where they are across the globe, right? And where they're doing some of these things. So I do appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tracy. Safe travels.
All right, thanks. Everybody, until next week, stay safe and eat well. Thanks. Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.